At Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms. I am at Kiagesimba2146. Let's get talking this morning. Hashtag business I am. This is our economic review. China Road and Bridge Corporation, CRBC, the company contracted by the government of Kenya for construction of the 474 billion Mombasa-Naivasha standard gauge rail SGR, is projected to take home 977 million, about 106.8 billion as dividend and other incomes from the 2.75 billion. That's around 2.75 2000. That's $2,765 dollars. That's about 302.4 billion Kenya shillings in revenues that are expected from the express highway. Now, the company, through its local arm, Moja Expressway Company, will earn an annual 3.9 or 35% of revenues, which will accrue from toll fee charged on motorists who will use the 27.1 kilometer road. Now, motorists using the road linking Mlolongo to the Nairobi-Nakuru highway via Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, JKIA, will pay between 109 shillings and 1,641 shillings, depending on the size of the cars and distance traveled. Now, the disclosures were tabled in Parliament last week and put the Chinese firm's earnings at 163% of the 599.5 million US dollars estimated cost of building the road. In submissions to Parliament, Transport CS James Macharia said that, and I quote, total cash flow generated from their operation activities, mainly toll revenue during the concession period, is estimated at 302.419 billion. That's about 2.75 billion US dollars. Now, the main purpose of the road is to decongest the section of the road from Mlolongo to James Gishuru by the transferring of an estimated 30% of traffic volume from the existing road to the new expressway. Good. This morning, I want us to look at another visible area that the government could have therefore used to pay this money if this toll wouldn't have not been an option. And I want us to look at how much money that the government collects from a fuel levy. And this is the data that we have for you this morning. And you can actually see, if we're going to look at that data under fuel levy, then all the way from 2016 to 2017 and 2019, 2020, up to where we're right now, it has been on an incremental phase. But if you look at those volumes, you will see they're not even an eighth of the amount of money that we expect to get from the expressway, which therefore begs the question, if we're going to pay via the toll system, which we do know in the country we abolished in the 1980s, how are we going to get this money? To help us therefore put these figures and these matters into perspective this morning, we are joined by the CEO, Miradi Capital, Abraham Modogo. Abraham, good morning, sir.
Good morning to you.
I want us to look at that figure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of money.
It is.
Is it pointing us to a way where we're going to discuss about how are we going to get this money? Are we going to force people to use it now if indeed we're going to get this money?
See, first of all, let's put all this into context.
Yes.
This project is a PPP project.
Yes.
And in PPP, there are various models. This model being used here is the build, operate, transfer, BOT. Therefore, the government is not putting its money.
Yes.
You know, I think that decision is very clear.
Yes.
This investor, the Chinese investor, is putting their money in. So they're getting 6% of it. So it's a return. I mean, they are not doing it for free.
Yes.
So they are going to make money out of it. Turning to what you're asking, that highway will have immense advantages to the people who value their time.
Yes.
So they have no problem. If you go to main cities around the world, if you go to Dubai, you go to America, you go to the US, they have these options where you can use the normal road or you can go on an express highway and pay for it.
Yes.
Now, the modalities of how people are going to pay, whether they want to use digital, like in Dubai, where what they do, they have chips. So as you pass, it deducts it from your wallet, which is an electronic wallet.
Yes.
So you don't have to stop physically anywhere. So as soon as you pass, there's a scan to your car and then you go. So I don't know how they're going to collect it because I think they've not disclosed it as yet. But will they have business? Yes, they will. because the person who is in James Gishuru and wants to go to the airport, to pay 150 shillings to get there faster. In fact, fuel-wise, it's more expensive to use the road that has traffic jam. If you look at that saving in fuel alone,
yes.
it is more than this. So
yes.
I believe they'll get that business. I believe they'll get those numbers. And for us, this is a good way to go because this particular project has not grown our debt because it's somebody else took the tab and they're getting paid. So
yes.
that's what the PPP, as onerous as that law is, finally I think we're getting somewhere now. This has taken off. So if you have more of those models, it means that's the only way the government is able to tap into private sector money and to build its infrastructure
yes.
without growing on it. Because the only other way is growing the debt the way we are growing.
Yes. Abraham, somebody's going to ask you therefore. Yes. I mean, what culture are we working with in Kenya? And I want to point you out to exactly what has happened yes. with the SGR, because the same company is the one that was contracted to
yes.
actually
yes.
Go with the SGR. When it comes to cargo business in the country, people have options.
Yes.
And it's exactly what they're looking at. We have a better option here where I can use road. Are we going to sit in the same scenario where we are going to sort of struggle to collect this revenue? Should have we gone the fuel levy way? Because if you look at those numbers then, I mean, we say, well, we are okay if we're down the fuel levy way, so that we are sure that whether we like it or not, in just a couple of years, we are paying for the expressway, which you can use for free now if you want.
You see, the fuel levy
yes.
is collected countrywide.
Yes.
So I don't think it's fair for somebody in Turkana to pay for a project that he'll probably never use.
Yes.
You know, a tax also has to be fair. This levy is normally used to do roads across the country.
Yes.
So in that way, it's fair because
yes.
everybody eventually will get their share.
Yes.
And whatever is critical to them is. But now, if you pay this using the fuel levy, you are literally saying somebody who will never use this road is going to pay for it. So that's not fair. So for this project, since a PPP, you pay per use. And again, look at it in terms of developmental risk, in terms of commercial risk. Government is taking none of it. On our worst case, our government will have, our government, by extension Kenyans, will have a highway. On the worst case.
Which they cannot own in 27
Which you can own in 27. Whether
yes.
these guys make money or not.
Yes.
So the issue is, it's a very good model because you see all the risks that are inherent in any project are all sitting with the Chinese,
yes.
the Chinese investor.
Yes.
And they have done their homework. Probably they've done their homework, they've done their math. That's why they're projected probably to do 6%, they may do less, they may do more.
Yes.
We never know. But the issue here is we cannot use fuel levy to pay for this because in that way, the administration of that tax will not be fair.
Yes, but let's look at the interconnectivity that we're talking about here. If somebody's going to say, well, let me pay this 1,000 bob or this 150 shillings to get from James Gishuru yes. and go to the airport yes. or from Lolongo all the way to Wayaki Way. Yeah. Do you think it makes proper sense? Because then you also have to look at the road that you're going to if you're actually going to make this sacrifice for this 27 kilometers. Does it make sense now for economic sense for you and I to say, well, if I'm on Lolongo, then let me just pretty much go to Westlands through the expressway. Does it make sense there?
It does. For those who live, the people who live in Lolongo,
yes.
I don't think it's a no-brainer.
Yes.
If I live in Lolongo and I work in Westlands, I will go on that expressway every day. Because the fuel and time that I'm saving is 150 is a pale shadow.
Yes. Yes.
So in terms of valuing your time, in terms of valuing your fuel, so even as an economy, we'll save massive amounts of money because the amount of time people spend on the road is not acceptable.
Yes.
So that and don't forget, once we heap out the 30%, and I think it will be even a bigger percentage, probably they'll cut that traffic by half.
Yes.
So that we have half up there, half down here. Then we're all good. So even the guys down here will also benefit from that project without paying for it because they'll have faster times getting to where they're going.
Somebody want to ask you this question, Abraham, from what you said it this morning. When you were talking about the expressway, which we're now constructing in the country, how bad did we need this project? Because that has to be a conversation as well.
Yeah,
yes.
you see something, that it's a valid question. And it could vary from we did not need it to we
yes.
needed it urgently.
Yes.
But the good thing is that risk somebody else is taking. So it's okay. It's fine. Whether we needed it or did not need it, somebody is taking the tab for it.
Yes.
They're putting it up, so be it.
Yes.
In fact, now that you brought the SGR argument, you imagine if SGR had been done using this model. It would have been perfect. Because they would have been told if you're not competitive, we'll not use you. but the real money is there, and,
Yes.
and the time will be ticking.
Yes.
So whether they make money or not, 30 years off they go. But now this one is different. We are sitting on debt that we are paying. So that's why now we are struggling, because we are saying, as an economic asset, has the SGR sparked the economy enough to pay for itself? Those studies are still out there. They have to be done, because the only mistake we keep making is looking at the SGR as a financial asset. That is a total distortion, because SGR is an infrastructure, just
Yes.
like a road,
Yes.
which is never meant to make profit, but it's meant to spike the growth in an economy. And that increase in growth is what now you can tax and now pay for this with money left.
Yes.
But whether that is happening or not, there's no independent study that has been done. People are just stuck on it costs X amount, it's only bringing Y revenue, so it's making a loss.
Yes.
Those are very pedestrian remarks. I think we need to look at it from the economic and the financial and put them together and see, is this thing making sense for us? But the truth of the matter is, whether it's making sense or not, we are stuck with it. So since we are through it, I think let's keep riding until we get up the other side. And remember, the more we keep extending the SGR towards the border and cross,
Yes.
the more valuable it becomes.
Pretty much. Now, all right, let's move on to the next issue this morning, where Retirement Benefits Authority RBA report tabled in Parliament now indicates that the total unremitted retirement benefits dues stood at 35 billion shillings, with the state agencies and public universities among the biggest contributors to this miss. Retirement Benefits Authority indicated in that report that the biggest challenge currently is unremitted contributions of about 35 billion shillings. 95% contributed, now listen to this, by quasi-government institutions, local authorities, county governments that are all lap fund and lap trust public universities. Now, funding in public universities in the country has been heavily affected by sharp fall in the number of self-sponsored students in recent years, contributed by a sharp drop in the number of candidates scoring the minimum admission C+ grade in the Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education. Fine. Let's look at exactly what the government has been spending in terms of pension in the country. And if you look at that data, then you can talk about an incremental phase up to where we are right now. So if we were at around 74 billion, and now RBA is telling us that 35 billion of that has been remitted, that is close to half of what we are supposed to get in terms of those statutory payments that have not been remitted by these government institutions. Therefore, begging the question, could we blame the COVID-19 pandemic, because all of them are doing that? And I'm going to start with the universities, Abraham, this morning. I mean, they expected that to happen. Are we going to talk about increased funding to these universities then, if you can't sort of reduce the minimum grade for going to universities?
See, the problem here
Yes.
is simply non-remittance.
Yes.
The RBA Act is a very, very robust act,
Yes.
if you read it. And it has very stiff penalties to stop this kind of thing. So the first question would be, why has it gotten to this level? Where is the enforcement? Because I can tell you, RBA, especially with the private sector, they are very, very strict.
Yes.
So how we have arrived at this, I'm not very sure about. But the question, the issue, it is not because of lack of a legal framework to enforce.
Yes.
Maybe the lack of enforcement. Number two, this kind of thing comes this way. An institution has only so much money, have less money than they budgeted, that they asked for.
Yes.
Probably for universities, money they asked for from the exchequer. So now what happens, and it's a very rampant habit, where a company pays net salaries. Your payroll is 1 billion shillings, but the net salaries is about 500.
Yes.
So you pay that. So everybody has a salary. But you see, the gross was 1 billion. So this 500 M is maybe to NSSF, to loans, to everything. Now that starts suffering, because like for example, like for pensions, the contributory one, you'll find the most employers will pay double what you're paying.
Yes.
So if you're paying 5% of your salary, they're paying 15%. So the total, what they're holding is 15% of your salary. You see? So that whole amount is what is in the gross.
Yes.
So because they have less money, they choose to pay net salaries and be able to pay salaries for longer.
Yes.
Because of constraints. So this is a symptom of that those institutions have less money than they actually budgeted for. So of course, the way out for there, it is up to them and their respective councils. But this is unacceptable, because the moment you don't, and remember, the RB Act was put in place way back around, I remember when it was around the year 2000, thereabout. I remember when it was coming in, to stop this very thing.
Yes.
Because that time employers did what they wanted, they withheld. So for it to happen under an RBA regime is a bit worrying. So for me, I think RBA should enforce the law to its full.
Yes.
Because they have the powers to enforce the law. And their powers are sweeping almost as equal as those of KRA.
Yes.
In respect to the pensions. Don't forget, that money is the only money that this person will have when they walk out. So if they walk out today, they go to their fund manager. The fund manager tells them, yes, your payslip shows this, but I will receive this. So this is something that needs to be cured very, very fast.
Yes.
Yes, what are the options? The options are that the government might have to put money in, because this money is not there.
It's not there.
Because it's simply not there.
Yes.
But then the question is, then do we really need all that stuff? How come we are unable to pay them?
Yes.
What is the problem? That means then probably we are and one of the main problems again is the revenue. The private programs are gone. That was a big gravy train.
Yes.
So that was those things we need to remodel our entire university education model in terms of how many lecturers do we need and how do we pay them. And that's why you see all the time they're asking for more money and more money and more money. And it's true, a lecturer does an excellent job. We are all here because we are products of teachers,
yes,
lecturers, and everybody in the teaching profession. They need to be paid well. But at the same time, we can only pay what we have. So we have to sit down and say, this is what we can afford. We sit and agree. These are the numbers we can work with. But for those that we retain, let's pay them to the last cent. Pretty
much. Abraham, another thing that is really standing out there is exactly how state agencies are the ones that are contributing to 95% of this unremitted dues. I mean, is that, what do you read into that? I mean, if state agencies are the ones that are leading, then there has to be something that's going on there. And I want to take you back to the pronouncement that President Uhuru Kenyatta made in back in July, when he said that, well, state agencies should not take each other to court. Find ways of solving your problems. Could you think that is making the ground a bit easier for these state agencies to actually play on? And even when you look at even the unclaimed assets, you find again that state agencies are the ones that are leading in that as well. What could be happening on the government side when it comes to issues like this?
Yeah, you're right. When it comes enforcement of government to government,
yes,
it's left pocket versus right pocket.
Yes.
So it's a bit tricky, and that could be the reason. I may not be privy to why, but that because this will hardly happen in the private sector, as I was telling you.
Yes.
Because RBA will be on your neck till you pay, with the penalties.
Yes.
So here, it could be a question of that. Let's assume the assumptions we made. Let's say they received less money than they were supposed to receive. RBA writes to them, they tell them, but we were not given enough money. That conversation cannot go beyond that. Because the question is RBA's government, this institution is government, and they are telling them the reason why this is not happening.
Yes.
We cannot pay what we don't have. So it goes back to our budgetary process. Because are we budgeting what we can? You see, the budget is one thing, but the cash flow to back the budget is another matter.
Yes.
Because only if cash flow, it's cash that runs an economy. You can budget all you want. But until the money comes, it will not happen. And you can see these are the symptoms. But probably we are not generating enough money in that sector, or we are not funding this sector enough, given the kind of capacity we have. So it's either we're sharing that capacity or we fund them more.
Pretty much. All right, let's move on to the next issue that we have for you this morning. Why it could soon be legal to bet using less than 100 shillings in the country, as it could attract a 5 million fine or a jail term of up to 6 years if Parliament enacts into law recommendations aimed at cutting betting among the youth in the country. Parliament had last year proposed a minimum betting stake of 50 shillings, but the Interior Ministry successfully appealed for doubling of the minimum stake in a bid to cut back on what they called irresponsible betting in the country. The proposal, which has already been received by the National Assembly's Sports, Culture and Tourism Committee, if approved by lawmakers, will make it expensive to bet, with current bets in the country going for as low as 5 shillings. Let's look at that little breakdown that we did for you there on exactly what the betting space in the country really is in terms of tax regime. And the only thing that I want you to say there is withholding tax, which is at 20%, which could be the biggest one, and now, which was previously also at 35%. But now we do know there are other areas as well, because you're taxed on your bets, you're taxed on your winnings, and you're taxed on your bets as well. Now, they do not want you to bet with 50 shillings. They're saying this could take you to jail for 6 years or a fine of 5 million shillings. Abraham, which therefore begs the question, what is therefore left of the betting space in Kenya? I mean, what would you want to go in that in a very heavily regulated space?
First of all, and maybe I'm missing something.
Yes.
Why would they tell you that if you bet less than 100, they will jail you? Why don't we just make the system impossible to bet less than 50? Is that easier? I mean,
Yes.
really, maybe unless I'm missing something.
Yes.
So I really don't understand that. Secondly, I'm not a fan of betting, and I've
Yes.
made this position very clear
Yes.
before. To me, this is not food production or medicine. It's something you can do without.
Yes.
It's an addiction.
Yes.
And let's call it by its name. So if the same way we manage cigarette and alcohol consumption, we tax it to the core for two reasons. One, it's very lucrative because there are a lot of people there. And
Yes.
two, it's a social ill that we have to live with. So social ills have to pay the sin tax for it because it has its own negative impact
Yes.
on our economy. And we know it.
Yes.
Just the same way alcohol has a negative impact, cigarettes have its, so does this one. But this one seems to really have its way all the time. The issue is taxing 20%, nothing is new. Income tax is at 30, is at 25. So,
Yes.
so what is the problem? So as I'm telling you, sometimes we cry over things that we should not be crying about. This is a money you've bet. You know, this is a matter of chance. You've bet that Arsenal will beat Man U, and Man U beat Arsenal, and you get 20,000.
Yes.
Windfall. So if I take 4,000 of it, what's the big deal? You know. So for me, I will not join this pity party.
Yes.
The issue is everybody, they have to pay their taxes to the last.
Yes.
And regulation, yes, we have to move towards responsible betting at a very high speed.
Yes.
And the issue of low bets, that can be system controlled. That if your system is found to be accepting bets below 100, that punishment should go to the betting.
That punishment should go to the betting.
Yeah,
company,
because you
isn't
see,
it? Yes.
if you lower it to this side, because how come I'm able to bet?
That
So
means that
both
the
of you,
systems allow, isn't
so
it?
the betting team, the
Yes.
betting company
Yes.
is abetting
Yes.
the crime.
Yes.
So for me, this is a system issue. I think it's a very simple thing that can be done at the tweak of a code, and that matter goes away. So that we concentrate on the bigger issues, which is how do we make them responsible? How do we make them responsible citizens, despite the fact that they're in a sin industry? And how do we tax them responsibly? We don't have to tax them, but these taxes are still within.
Yes.
Yes. In fact, they are the only people, I think, in the last budget whose taxes were reduced. They were one of the few people, so, miraculously. You see, they were 35, they went down.
Now they went down
So,
as well. Yes.
so there should be people, actually the people who should be kept quiet the most and allow the manufacturers to make all the noise, because they're the ones who suffer.
Is it possible, Abraham, to say, well, this is a government that's looking for tax, and we don't know how Kerry is struggling to get to come up to terms with their tax receipts, which have been also declining month on month. Is it possible to say, well, you do need these players in the economy, but how can you scratch both sides? Can you get to a balance where you're saying, well, they got to operate because they give us a lot of taxes. Can we try and find a way we're keeping these monies here and also help them operate? Because now the feeling is that, well, there is nothing left for them. It's regulation upon regulation.
But is that really true? You know, let's have an honest conversation on this issue.
Yes.
What is the problem? People are betting. You know, there's one part we never discuss. If you look at the day that I keep giving that example, Emmanuel playing Paris Saint-Germain, and there were bets of $1 billion in one day. The winnings that day were not more than 100 million. So the company made 900 million. We don't talk about that. We only talk about the tax on the 900 million. You see,
Yes.
I think here there's a lot of small screens, and we need to focus.
Yes.
This around the world, betting is profitable business, no matter what you do to them.
Yes.
Yes, you can even if we went to took it to 50%, they still make money, because what are they producing? They just have a platform and odds, and those are generated by a system which is driven by machine learning and AI.
Yes.
So literally, once all they manage is uptime, that's it. And their tills at Safaricom and everywhere else that they manage their passes from. And as soon as the match is over, they close out. Those who lost. They take their money. Those people who won, they give their money and they go to the next bet. So for me, this is one industry that I think we need to start concentrating less about.
Yes.
Yeah. These are the rules. You play by them or you walk away and you move on. I think there are more other sectors that also need our time. Because if you're not in the production, because it's not a production, they're in the same category with alcohol
Yes.
and cigarettes.
Yes.
I have nothing against the three of them, but they are in the same industry. They have those are products that have harmful effects, both pathological and psychological and financial. The negative effects are known. So since we all know that, but we've decided that as a civil society we are going to live with this ill, then it must be structured and it has to move towards responsible. We now have responsible smoking, we have responsible drinking, let's have responsible betting.
Pretty much, yeah. All right, now just as we end our economic review this morning, now we do know quickly, we're going to touch on what has been a proposal on our economic recovery strategy. And Abraham, just for you now, and I'm going to pick for me what really stood out from those proposals, and then you can also touch on exactly what stood out for you as well. Now, the Treasury is telling us that we should be getting ready to pay a tax on unemployment, that for the employed Kenyans, you have to get ready to pay 1% of your salary taxable, that is going to go into contribution into a kitty that will be worth 23 billion shillings that will go into covering the short-term inadequacies that may be brought about by crises and pandemics like the COVID-19 pandemic that will cater for unemployment at that short span. Do you agree? A good proposal? A bad proposal?
No. You see, desperate time call for desperate measures.
Yes.
This is a desperate measure and it has to be done. Because
yes.
then where else do you get the money from? And it's only 1%. We're still living with your 99. Yeah. So
yes.
that one is helping your brother and sister.
Are we not looking at the other areas where you're taxed as well? Because there's a 1% on top of the others as well.
In the world, there are only two things that are sure.
Yes.
Death and taxes.
Yes.
So the more you start accepting taxes quickly, the better for you.
Everyone, I don't think most people are going to agree with you though.
They will not. Maybe I don't even agree with myself, but that is the reality. Taxes are here to stay.
Yes.
So just like their death is.
Yes.
So
and that coming from the fact that we didn't have anything for anybody who had lost their jobs during this COVID-19 pandemic.
We did, because see again, and to allow
yes.
to give it to any government around the world.
Yes.
Nobody had ever gone through this COVID. Nobody had never seen the decimation that the economies have gone through.
Yes.
So people are grappling, trying whatever works, because now people have realized it's not a one size fits all. What Australia will do may not fit in Austria. What Japan will do may not fit in Germany. So
yes.
what Kenya does may not work in Tanzania, as much as we share a border. So every country must look at their citizenry, must look at their infection levels, must look at their, how battered the economy is, and look at and how acceptable their citizenry are
yes.
to support the others. Because at the end of the day, those who have must support those who don't have. It's the only way out. Because when you're recovering, you must start from the known as you move toward the unknown.
That's true.
The known is that there are people with salaries.
Yes.
There are people with income. There are people with businesses. That's where we start. But we don't also tax them to death. We just massage them out, get them a few shillings, then increase this pot, then as we build until you get it back.
Yes, pretty much. Anything that stood out for you again in that economic recovery strategy?
When I read it through, it's a long document, it's a
yes.
98-page document.
Yes.
What came out for me was that actually we've restated our entire strategy for all the sectors. But what now we've done, we've mainstreamed the COVID response within every sector.
Yes.
So every sector now has mainstreamed that there's a COVID reality. So whatever plans we have done have been reworked to the COVID reality. That's yes. what they've done, because that document talks about all the sectors.
Yes.
Yes.
Pretty much. Yes. Abraham, thank you very much for creating time this morning out of your busy schedule to speak to us.
Most welcome.
All right, that's exactly what we have prepared for you on our economic review. Next, our sector trends. This morning, you're watching Metropole Television.